People are originally bad. It's just their morals that mask them as good. We'll dive into the psychology behind decisions, exploring how certainty in right and wrong is shaped, from philosophical thought experiments to the future of AI making life or death decisions. We'll uncover the layers that obscure our true nature and question whether moral certainty is ever really within reach. Why you can't and shouldn't trust people, and why they, or even you, shouldn't and can't be good fully. Everyone is devil in someone's story. This reality can be dark. Human mind is often dark. Discretion is advisable. So buckle up. What you learn might just shatter your assumptions, but I promise will make you 1% smarter. Chapter 1. A fork in our moral compass. Imagine yourself standing at the crossroads of a railway track. The trolley is hurtling down. Its brakes are gone, and in front of it are 5 people, unaware and unable to escape. In a moment of urgency, you notice a switch. If pulled, the trolley diverts to another track, where a lone individual stands. Do you let the trolley run its course, killing the 5, or do you intervene, sacrifice one to save the many? This thought experiment, often referred to as the trolley problem, has transcended philosophical classrooms and entered everyday discussions, particularly in ethics. Its simplicity is deceiving, as it forces us to confront the weight of life and death choices, the tension between doing something and doing nothing. It's more than just a mental exercise. It reflects the kinds of moral choices that shape our society, from individual decisions to systemic policies. So, what does the trolley problem really test? On the surface, it seems like a straightforward question of utilitarianism versus deontology. Do we value outcomes more than principles? A consequentialist, looking at the raw math, would flip the switch without hesitation. Saving 5 outweighs the death of 1. The numbers are on their side. But for a deontologist who believes in the importance of rules and duties, the choice is more troubling. Is it ever right to actively cause harm, even if it's to prevent a greater harm? Here, the principle of not killing seems to take precedence, even if it results in more lives lost. But the trolley problem is not as clean-cut as it seems. It assumes that ethical decisions can be reduced to a binary choice, save 5 or save 1. Life rarely presents us with such neat scenarios. Yet, this thought experiment has captivated minds for decades. The beauty and flaw of the trolley problem lies in its simplicity, which opens up endless discussions, but rarely provides closure. The challenge here isn't just in the decision itself, but in the uncertainty we all feel. Who are these people on the tracks? Does it matter? Should it matter? And more deeply, do we even have the right to make that choice for others? By putting us in the driver's seat of this moral puzzle, the trolley problem taps into the profound discomfort of responsibility, asking not only what will you do, but also how will you live with that choice? Chapter 2. Consequences versus duty. When faced with moral choices like the trolley problem, we are immediately drawn into 2 major ethical schools of thought: consequentialism and deontology. These approaches frame the world in starkly different ways, and the tension between them lies at the heart of this dilemma. Consequentialism, particularly utilitarianism, argues that the morality of an action hinges on its outcomes. It's simple, really. A good action leads to the best possible result for the most people. In the trolley scenario, a consequentialist would quickly flip the switch. Sacrificing 1 life to save 5 is a better overall outcome, mathematically and ethically. This logic is often seen as practical, and in many real-world situations, we rely on it. Governments make policies based on the greater good. Hospitals allocate resources to save the most lives, and individuals make sacrifices to benefit others. When faced with moral choices like the trolley problem, we are immediately drawn into 2 major ethical schools of thought. These are consequentialism and deontology. These approaches pose two explicitly dissimilar ways of viewing the world, and this conflict is the essence of this case. Among the most strident theories of this type of ethical reasoning is utilitarianism, which Virginia concentrates on the statement that consequences determine the morality of an action. It's simple, really. A good action. It makes the best scenario for the majority of societal members. Immediately in the trolley scenario, a consequentialist would pull the switch, taking one life in order to spare five, since mathematically, and in the realm of utilitarian ethics, it is the best option. Yet, the cold calculus of utilitarianism can feel emotionally unsettling. This is where deontology, championed by thinkers like Immanuel Kant. Instead of focusing on outcomes, deontologists emphasize the importance of following moral principles or duties. In this view, some actions are simply wrong, no matter what good might come from them. Flipping the switch may save five, but it also involves intentionally directing harm toward an innocent person. For deontologists, this active participation in killing, even with good intentions, is morally unacceptable. This tension between duty and consequences is the crux of what makes the trolley problem so compelling and divisive. On one hand, the logical mind is drawn to the utilitarian outcome, more lives saved. But on the other, our moral intuition balks at the idea of purposefully causing harm. We hesitate because deontology resonates with something deeper, perhaps our fear of being morally tainted by the consequences of our actions. It feels different to allow harm to happen than to cause it, even if the outcome is the same. Interestingly, psychological studies have shown that people often default to consequentialist reasoning in life or death decisions, but revert to deontological thinking when the stakes involve personal moral integrity. This demonstrates a bias toward protecting one's own moral identity, even if it contradicts the greater good. It's as though we struggle to balance the cold rationality of consequences with the personal cost of violating ethical principles. In real-life scenarios such as warfare or healthcare ethics, this debate isn't just academic. Decisions about triage, resource distribution, and even life-saving technologies force us to constantly wrestle between doing the most good or adhering to unwavering principles. The trolley problem serves as a metaphor for these broader struggles, but it's also a reminder that our ethical decisions are rarely as straightforward as this clean thought experiment. Real-life morality involves far more nuance, uncertainty, and a constant tug-of-war between logic and conscience. Chapter 3: Beyond Numbers. When we think about the trolley problem, it's easy to get caught up in the numbers. But behind those abstract figures lies the more profound question: how do we value human life? The problem invites us to make an uncomfortable calculation. Yet life isn't merely an equation. The human factor adds layers of complexity that no simple formula can solve. This is where the trolley problem starts to fray. It strips away the personal elements that shape our moral judgments in real-life situations. Who are the people on the tracks? Do their identities, relationships, or roles in society matter? It's easy to say that 5 anonymous lives are more valuable than one. But what if that one person is your child, a close friend, or someone who has made a significant contribution to the world? Suddenly, the equation feels less clear. Psychological research has delved into this issue. Studies show that when we know more about the individuals involved in a moral dilemma, our decisions shift from cold calculation to personal attachment. This is known as the identifiable victim effect, where people are more likely to act to save a specific person rather than a group of unknown individuals. It's a bias deeply rooted in our psychology. We respond to stories and personal connections, not statistics. What the trolley problem tends to ignore is this aspect of the human emotional process of decision-making. Real-life moral choices do not occur in vacuum. He stands shaped by the relations we have and the culture we possess. For instance, doctors are forced at times to make decisions that appear rational, commit resources to save the most lives. Still, these choices can be associated with some significant emotional backgrounds. Working with personal empathy and concentrating on minimizing the suffering of people. Also, the trolley problem assumes that choices we make are always reasonable, that we can put our heart aside and make decisions based on the trolley problem. But again, anyone out there who has ever been faced with a crisis of ethics can tell you that emotion does count for something when it comes to behavior. During stress, fear, or actual grief, our rational thinking capacity suffers significantly. This brings the concept that may appear in one's life that is, or moral luck, where certain factors which are internal, to include intensity, and emotions which influence the action we take. But we are not only rational animals. The perception we have of ourselves, of our past, and which emotions we have inherited or acquired dictates the way we make moral decisions. Ultimately, the trolley problem raises a deeper question. This paper will also seek to question whether it is possible to look at any process or venture and separate it from the ethics of its practice. It's not 5 lives, or 1. It is about exploring how society continues to quantify the worth of a life based on circumstances, feelings, and individual experience. Chapter 4. The Illusion of Choice. On immediate perception, one may distinguish 2 options, which are before the utilities: to turn on the switch or not to turn on the switch. But when we dig deeper, the problem reveals something more troubling: the liberal illusion of moral certainty. Regrettably, life, with its many unpredictable elements and possibilities, rarely offers us 2 clean options. This, the simplest way of framing the problem, and immediately gives the impression that we are in possession of sufficient information to make a totally moral choice. As a matter of fact, that could hardly be true in the real world. Real-life scenarios always make it hard for you to have complete information about a situation, or maybe about everything. Many a time we make our choices and courses of action based on working knowledge, self-recipes of what we believe to be the truth and an estimate of the possible ways it might turn out. The trolley problem assumes that we know exactly what will happen. That 5 will die if switch is not being flipped, but in real life, we do not have this kind of certainty, or we are not always confident in the actions we decide to take. But what if the trolley stops just before reaching the 5? But what if the single person on the other track will not be eliminated by the accident? There are no bright ideas. All decisions are made without considering a future beyond the next quarter. This leads to what is called moral uncertainty. For most ethic issues, it is very hard to know all of the ramifications that will ensue. Such a scenario doesn't just complicate the decision, but potentially immobilizes us. Such uncertainty is often counterproductive, since some individuals tend to be paralyzed into inactivity, better off not taking any course of action at all. This phenomenon is called omission bias, so people would consider the lack of action as less immoral than the action they understand as bad. With the trolley switch, being passive is very much a part of the program, rather than the doing that actively kills. However, is not standing idly the same as being ethically blameless. The illusion of choice also hides another layer of complexity, the moral weight of responsibility. Once you flip that switch, you're directly responsible for the death of one person. The weight of this responsibility can distort our decision-making process. We tend to fear being the direct cause of harm, even if our action results in a better overall outcome. This fear is not always rational, but deeply human. It touches on what philosophers call agent regret, where individuals feel personal guilt for outcomes they cause, even if those outcomes were unavoidable or, in some sense, better than the alternatives. Furthermore, this sense of moral responsibility ties into the concept of moral luck. The idea that factors beyond our control, such as the specific circumstances we find ourselves in, can shape how we're judged ethically. In the trolley problem, your moral fate depends entirely on the random circumstance of being the person next to the switch. Had you not been there, you wouldn't face this moral dilemma at all. The randomness of such scenarios begs the question: can we even hold ourselves accountable for decisions that are forced upon us by sheer chance? This discomfort with responsibility and uncertainty challenges the very foundations of thought. Experiments like the trolley problem. While the experiment is useful in abstract discussions of ethics, it falters in its application to real-life dilemmas. It falsely suggests that we have enough clarity and control to make a definitive moral choice, when, in reality, our lives are filled with uncertainty, and the outcomes of our actions are often beyond our control. Thus, the trolley problem isn't just a lesson in ethics. It's a reminder of the limits of our knowledge and the weight of our moral responsibility. Life's real dilemmas are filled with shades of gray, where certainty is elusive, and sometimes there are no right answers at all. Chapter 5. Let's explore moral certainty further. Who would not like to be sure? To be certain that, at any particular time, the decision one is about to make is the right one. It's little wonder we wish there were established ethical principles that would help us make the right decision every time concerning the right thing. But, as we learned in the trolley problem, morale problems dispel this utopia. We worry and doubt ourselves, our choices, and the basics of moral distinctions. It became evident that the issue with moral certainty is that it is rigid. They lay down the proposition that there's always a right or correct answer, a fixed rule for all occasions. This belief can really be reassuring, can make a person feel secure in a rather uncertain world. However, such certainty is not very typical in daily practice, since it is a constantly changing world. What you know may be the farthest from the truth today, given the state of affairs, our feelings, or the availability of fresh information to support our newly held beliefs. For instance, there is the view that some behaviors are wrong in any circumstance, or that other behaviors are not wrong. There is a point that no amount of reasoning is correct for a moral absolutes theorist to justify killing as being moral, because killing is always wrong. This can help in its own right to understand certain situations. But in problems where one is faced with an appearance of having to hurt someone, such as the trolley case, there are difficulties. In this case, moral absolutism provides no solution. No matter the decision one makes here, the moral conscience points to wrongdoing. On the flip side, moral relativism suggests that right and wrong depend on the context and cultural norms. This perspective allows for flexibility, acknowledging that what is considered moral in one situation might not apply in another. However, this approach can also lead to moral uncertainty. If ethics are constantly shifting based on circumstance, how can we ever be sure of the right choice? The fluid nature of moral relativism can leave us in a state of perpetual doubt, never fully confident that our actions align with any stable sense of morality. Finding that balance is the challenge. We can become too certain about the world, blind to the messiness of life, or too uncertain, falling into paralysis, seeking our next decision. This is where moral humility is necessary. Knowing the range of what we know about ethics enables us to entertain moral quandaries without the rigidity of rules and the despair of indecision. This is a tension that proponent of utilitarianism, philosopher John Stuart Mill, had to deal with. The of general principles of ethics was well recognized by Mill, but it was also considered that the special situation of every dilemma required consideration. It's a pragmatic one. We look for moral clarity, knowing that our understanding will never be fully complete. In Mill's philosophy, we will never have full certainty, But through his philosophy, he says that by striving for moral clarity, we'll understand more of the world and find ourselves guided by understanding, but not needing absolute answers. As we embrace this uncertainty, we also open ourselves to moral growth. Realizing we don't always know the right answer enables us to learn from our experiences, adjust our values, and become more well-rounded as humans. It gets us out of the black and white way thinking that often goes with moral certainty and into a more compassionate, adaptive approach to ethical dilemmas. Ultimately, the pursuit of moral certainty is fraught with challenges. The more we seek definitive answers, the more we realize how elusive they are. But perhaps this uncertainty is not a flaw in our ethical reasoning, but a reflection of the complexity of life itself. Instead of striving for certainty, we might find more value in cultivating moral resilience, the ability to make difficult decisions, learn from them, and adapt our understanding of right and wrong in an ever-changing world. Moral dilemmas are messy, and so are we, and maybe that's okay. Chapter 6. The Role of Emotion. Our emotions certainly have a huge role to play in how we make ethical decisions that we rarely think about, but we often see moral certainty as rooted in reason and logic. The difficulty in defining moral certainty lies in this interplay between reason and emotion. When reason meets emotion, it's often led in a direction logic may protest. For example, emotional weight of empathy. Empathy helps us really connect with others, understand why they do the things they do, imagine why they suffer. That's a big deal. Understandably, it's hard to make ethical decisions without thinking about how our actions will affect the people around us. Empathy is useful, but it's not always reliable. It's inherently selective. The identifiable victim effect is a particular propensity. We have to feel more empathy for individuals than for groups. In general, this might be in the context of the trolley problem, where what it means is that you can more easily imagine the lone person on the second track, an individual, as being the one who feels more emotional for your sake. It can even blur moral reasoning due to this emotional bias. Intellectually, you can know that saving 5 lives is better than 1, but that's not acting against the strong pull of empathy for the person you can see in your mind. The outcome still seems just as certain rationally, but the decision now seems much less certain. According to Jonathan Haidt, many of our moral decisions are really post hoc, a way to make a decision we chose already emotionally. According to his social intuitionist model, Haidt says we often act on moral decisions out of gut reactions, then rationalize them later. To this, the search for moral certainty might in fact be more about convincing ourselves that our decisions were rational and justified than it was about clear, reasoned conclusions as a starting point. This emotional influence can be seen in studies of moral disgust, where our feelings of repulsion can influence how we judge the morality of others. In experiments, people who were placed in a room with a foul smell were more likely to pass harsh moral judgments than those in a neutral environment. While this may seem irrelevant to the trolley problem, it reveals how easily external factors can sway our moral compass. Even when we believe we're making decisions based on solid ethical reasoning, emotions, often subtle and unconscious, are influencing our thought processes. Moreover, emotions such as fear, guilt, and even anger can skew our sense of moral certainty. When we fear being judged by others, we might make decisions that align with social norms, even if they conflict with our personal values. This social influence introduces yet another layer of complexity into the trolley problem. Are you flipping the switch because it's the right thing to do, or because it's what you think you should do in the eyes of society? This is where moral conformity comes into play, as we may subconsciously adjust our decisions to fit what's expected of us, especially when the stakes are high. This tug of war between emotion and reason exposes the fragility of moral certainty. When emotions cloud our judgment, what feels like a solid moral stance can quickly crumble under scrutiny. Yet, dismissing emotions entirely isn't the answer either. Emotions often provide valuable insights into human suffering, justice, and fairness. In recognizing the role of emotion in ethical decisions, we must ask ourselves, can we ever be truly certain about what's right, given how deeply our feelings influence us? Or, perhaps more productively, should we aim to balance emotion and reason, allowing our empathy to inform our choices without letting it overtake our sense of fairness? Moral certainty, when placed in the hands of emotion, becomes less about clarity and more about navigating the shifting landscape of human feeling. The challenge is not in eliminating emotion from the equation, but in understanding how it interacts with our ethical reasoning, an interaction that complicates the desire for moral clarity and certainty. Chapter 7: The Influence of Culture. As we continue to unpack the concept of moral certainty, it becomes increasingly clear that our understanding of what is right or wrong is not just an individual endeavor. It's deeply influenced by the cultural contexts in which we find ourselves. This brings us to a crucial question. How do our cultural backgrounds shape our moral beliefs and, consequently, our sense of moral certainty? Cultural norms dictate a lot of what we consider ethical behavior. They establish frameworks for understanding morality that can differ dramatically from one society to another. For instance, while many Western cultures emphasize individualism and personal autonomy, collectivist cultures often prioritize community well-being and harmony. This fundamental difference affects how moral dilemmas are approached. In a collectivist society, saving the 5 people at the expense of the one might be viewed as a necessary sacrifice for the greater good. Conversely, in a more individualistic context, the act of deliberately harming an individual, even for a noble cause, might be considered inherently wrong. This divergence raises important considerations about moral certainty. If our ethical judgments are rooted in cultural perspectives, can we claim to possess universal moral truths? Cultural relativism suggests that moral beliefs are valid only within specific cultural contexts, and as such, moral certainty becomes a slippery concept. This challenges the very notion that we can arrive at a definitive answer to ethical dilemmas, like the trolley problem. Cross-cultural studies reveal just how deeply culture influences moral decision-making. For instance, a study conducted by researchers at Harvard and the University of Chicago found that people from different cultural backgrounds responded differently to moral dilemmas involving harm to individuals versus groups. Those from Western cultures tended to focus more on individual rights, while participants from East Asian cultures often considered the broader implications for the group. These findings suggest that our cultural lenses can dramatically shape our perceptions of moral scenarios, highlighting the difficulty in establishing any universally accepted moral principles. Moreover, cultural narratives and myths play a significant role in shaping our moral landscapes. Stories passed down through generations, whether they are religious texts, folk tales, or historical accounts, often contain moral lessons that guide community behavior. These narratives create a shared understanding of right and wrong, embedding specific values within the cultural fabric. When confronted with moral dilemmas, individuals may unconsciously draw from these narratives, seeking moral certainty based on the beliefs and values instilled in them from an early age. However, this cultural conditioning can also lead to moral blind spots. When we become overly reliant on cultural norms, we risk overlooking ethical considerations that may contradict those norms. For example, practices deemed acceptable in one culture, such as certain forms of punishment, may be viewed as unjust in another. This raises questions about moral authority and the legitimacy of cultural practices, challenging our sense of certainty in moral judgments. This brings down our understanding of the culture's influence on ethics. Moral standards have changed in a great way throughout history, and society has changed over the time. Acceptable things are no longer acceptable anymore, like slavery or discrimination based on gender, for example. This evolution indicates that moral certainty is culturally constructed and historically contexted. In this complex territory, it might prove useful to adopt a cosmopolitan ethic that emphasizes our need to interact with the cultural others and recognize our commonality. This allows free conversation among the moral frameworks without imposing a moral of a single frame. When we see the richness of different ethical systems, we can grow a more fine-grained sense of moral certainty that honors cultural differences while pursuing a common ground. This leads to the point that there is far more that goes into ethical decisions than meets the eye. And in fact, ultimately, there are cultural influences on moral certainty. Instead of fixing for answers, we have to accept the complexity of human experience, and that moral certainty could be moving rather than a fixed target, a target that needs flexibility, empathy, and an ability to learn from others. With this understand, perhaps it could help us better navigate the murky with more compassion, with more awareness that it is not so much about having definitive answers, and it is more about finding deeper understand. Chapter 8. The Changing World. As we stand on the brink of unprecedented technological advancement and global interconnectedness, the landscape of moral certainty is undergoing profound transformations. The complexities of modern life bring new ethical dilemmas that challenge our existing frameworks, pushing us to reevaluate our understandings of right and wrong in ways we may not have anticipated. One significant factor influencing the future of moral certainty is the rise of artificial intelligence, AI, and automation, with machines increasingly making decisions that affect human lives, be it in healthcare, law enforcement, or autonomous vehicles. Our traditional notions of morality are put to the test. Trolley problem, once a thought experiment, now extends into real-world scenarios involving algorithms that must weigh lives against one another. As AI systems develop the capacity to learn from vast amounts of data, they will inevitably face moral dilemmas similar to the trolley problem. For instance, should an autonomous vehicle prioritize the safety of its passengers over pedestrians? Decisions like these force us to confront uncomfortable questions about responsibility and accountability in situations where machines make life and death choices. Moreover, as global communication becomes seamless through the internet and social media, cultural exchanges are occurring at an unprecedented rate. While this interconnectedness fosters greater empathy and understanding across different communities, it also creates a clash of moral perspectives. As we encounter diverse ethical frameworks, we may feel torn between loyalty to our cultural values and the need to adapt to a more global moral landscape. This phenomenon can lead to moral uncertainty as individuals grapple with conflicting beliefs and practices, often struggling to maintain a sense of certainty in their ethical stance. The other important factor in moral certainty is the increased awareness of systemic issues like climate change, inequality, and social justice. And these are complex challenges that will not be solved through individual action, but must be confronted together with ethical reflection on a scale previously seen. The very search for moral certainty becomes more difficult as people confront the fact that our individual choices have wide-reaching consequences. Individual actions may be felt as in reality seemingly insignificant, but they have aggregated effects on the social values and norms. It serves then as a reminder that there has to be an ethical framework to allow us to function in our interconnected world that is both individuality and collective action. At the same time, the rise of scientific progress at a fast rate instigates ethics theory to questions of what could be the possible consequence of the taking of new technologies. Genetic editing, biotechnology, and artificial intelligence bring the lines between human enhancement and ethical boundaries in a muddy state. Now we test moral certainty in its grappling with the implications of these innovations. What if you could edit your genes? Would that be okay? Designer babies, natural diversity and fairness. These technologies evolve, and so do our ethical considerations, and we must be in conversation about how to apply innovation with moral responsibility. In this landscape of change, moral literacy has to be fostered. I think it's important to learn the skills needed to engage with ethical dilemmas with thoughtful engagement, and to be open and curious about moral questions. It counts on promoting critical thinking and open discussion of ethics in education and public discourse, and helps people develop the ability to encounter other facets of the ethical dilemma. Reading, or further, watching literature, philosophy, and even personal interactions, we can get a deeper understanding of what is to our moral landscape. As we contemplate the future of moral certainty, it's crucial to acknowledge that the quest for ethical clarity is not about arriving at definitive answers. Instead, it's an ongoing journey that requires us to embrace ambiguity and uncertainty. By recognizing that moral certainty may evolve over time and across contexts, we can approach ethical dilemmas with a spirit of humility and a willingness to learn. This mindset allows us to adapt to the complexities of a rapidly changing world while remaining rooted in our shared humanity. In conclusion, the future of moral certainty is not predetermined. It is shaped by our choices, our interactions, and our willingness to engage with the world around us. As we confront new ethical challenges and navigate the intricacies of our global society, let us strive for a sense of moral clarity that is both informed by our traditions and responsive to the complexities of our time. In doing so, we can foster a more compassionate and just world, one that honors the diverse tapestry of human experience while seeking common ground in our shared quest for understanding and ethical action. Now, I must thank you for being here with me still. Now I expect you to comment and share your thoughts. Other algorithm things are up to you, like if you think YouTube community should see this video, give me a like. If you want future updates, subscribe and press the bell icon. So see you in the next video. Peace.